Israeli police have claimed that Professor Nadera Shalhoub-Kevorkian of the Hebrew University is engaged in serious incitement against the State of Israel. One of their concerns is her published scholarship, including her most recent book, Incarcerated Childhood and the Politics of Unchilding. My name is Sherene Razack, and I would like to explain this book to you, what this book argues, and talk about the extensive ethnographic work on which it is based. Remember that everything in this book was written before Gaza, where more than 10,000 children have been killed. The book begins with a very simple premise. To play, or to be mindful of planes flying overhead, a Palestinian child daily confronts the fraught situation of occupation, one in which play is not a right. And yet, children play, both joyfully and mindfully, a dynamic that is at the heart of Shalhoub-Kevorkian's book, informing her understanding of what she calls unchilding and how it is resisted. From house arrest, where their own parents become jailers, to maiming, killing, and caging, there is an intimacy to the violence that Israel unleashes at Palestinian children. Wombs, families, friendships, homes, hospitals, and schools are invaded. In Incarcerated Childhood and the Politics of Unchilding, we learn about the violence of occupation from children themselves, whether from those who experienced it during the Nakba and are now elderly, or those today who carry their toys to school in their backpacks, lest their homes are bulldozed before they return home again. Like indigenous children everywhere, Palestinian children are never considered children. They are survivors and important witnesses to the terrible violence of settler colonialism. Shalhoub-Kevorkian maintains that unchilding is a major preoccupation of the settler state. The state reaches into the womb, dispossessing the unborn before they take their first breath. Pregnant Palestinian children cannot easily give birth in Jerusalem and are endangered when they are delayed at checkpoints while in labor. As with its reach into the womb, the state dispossesses children of their childhood, making play and schooling processes that occur alongside soldiers with guns. Dispossessing children of their childhood enhances settler access to the land. Unchilding, as Shalhoub-Kevorkian sees it, is how you do colonialism. 5-year-old Salva, separated from her parents during the Nakba, for instance, and taken to Lebanon by an aunt, could not be returned to her parents. She is treated as an infiltrator and imprisoned for 2 weeks at 5 years old, for trying to cross the border back to her home. Scripted as security threats, violence against Palestinian children is a regular part of the war machine. The children themselves are keenly aware that they are targets from birth to death. As Abir, a 14-year-old girl, writes in a letter to Shalhoub-Kevorkian, they are after us, in the streets, at home, in bed, at school, even in the graveyard. Why is the child's body of particular interest to the settler colonial state? In the first instant, the child is the future. The demographic picture, where Palestinians have an elevated rate of reproduction compared to Jews, strikes fear in the settler. When a child is killed, what dies is the possibility of a Palestinian future. When the loss is a material advantage for the Jewish state, one less claimant or security threat, for the Palestinian, the loss accumulates, weakening families and communities. Nothing injures a community more than when its children are targets of violence. As settler regimes recognize, separating parents from their children is an efficient way to weaken communities and launch a genocide. This is a logic that has operated in my own field of research, from Canada to Australia, when Indigenous children were forcibly sent to residential schools. Kevorkian shows us that children are vital political capital. Their bodies can be used to convey the message that they and their parents and communities are uncivilized, threats that deserve to be met with force. From the Israeli Minister of Justice, who called Palestinian children little snakes, to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who circulated the idea that Palestinians deliberately use their own children as human shields, The child is weaponized in the language of politics. Shalhoub-Kevorkian is insistent that we not think of Palestinian children as innocent bystanders in a conflict zone, collateral damage as it were. Rather, we should consider how they are explicitly targeted by the settler state. As targets, Palestinian children do not easily attract humanitarian interest. No one wants to save the Palestinian child. It is impossible to separate the racialization of Palestinian children from the violence that is directed at them. The Muslim Arab Palestinian child is quite literally and not just symbolically treated as a terrorist. When we focus on the treatment of children, as Shalhoub-Kevorkian does in this book, what is illuminated is the dehumanization that powers the settler colonial project. Importantly, because Shalhoub-Kevorkian captures the strength and creativity of the children, it is, after all, a good idea to carry one's toys in the backpack unless, lest one's home be bulldozed. Her work leaves us with much more than the record of the imprint of settler power on Palestinian children. What we are able to see is Palestinian children's resistance and to glimpse a different future than the one the settler state intends. Incarcerated childhood disabuses us of the notion that people will be more easily moved to care about the violence directed at Palestinian children because they are children. The children of Palestine, Shalhoub-Kevorkian writes, do not stay on our minds for very long, for the simple reason that we do not see them as children. Terrorists do not have children, they have baby terrorists. And do you know, this is the argument of the current case against Shalhoub-Kevorkian, that her research is not good research, that it is in fact research not on children, but on baby terrorists. Honestly, can this kind of argument hold up when we consider the scholarly work that is involved in this book, Incarcerated Childhood?